If you're someone who's making a map for Dayz and you're getting really tired of manually placing road parts kind of like this, uh, and you just hate having to do it manually piece by piece like this, and you'd like to have some sort of automation for doing basically what you just saw there, then you found the right video. So I'd like to show you something that I've been working on for about a week now, that is trying to automate something that I feel like should have been automated, out of the box with this software here, this terrain builder software. So, like I said, if you're making a map in Dayz or for Dayz and you're placing the roads, right? There's like three main ways that I've heard of so far for, placing down these roads. You either have to go into Bulldozer and, pick them in the library manager here and in the, UI in the 3D, interface, manually place each road and rotate them manually and all that kind of stuff. So you can do that. Or you can use a terrain processor and use the line regular plugin to place a bunch of roads and automate it, which is nice. But you're only using one road piece and it doesn't look good around curves, so you have to fix them manually anyway, and certain people tell you not to use them, and they don't like them, whatever. And then you'll have another type of person who will say to you, oh, you should be using Road Tool, that's the best way of doing it. And it truly is, because it really, makes sure that all the road pieces that you're using curves and straight road pieces and all that kind of stuff. So that's what this is right here that you saw in the beginning. This is the road tool. But of course, you still kind of have to like guess and check, like, oh, what is the best road piece? So it's not perfect, and you still have to, place each road individually, one after the other. And maybe you don't want to be spending hours on end doing that, and you'd rather spend hours on end building out the actual towns themselves and decorating them. Maybe that's a more enjoyable experience than, placing the roads. That's very, like monotonous and obvious and like it's just unenjoyable. I'd rather it be automated, right? I don't think anyone has made a tool like this. That's kind of why I've started to do this because I couldn't like if I've heard three different people say different ways of building roads in Terrain Builder, then I would guess that no one has made a tool like this that you're about to see. Okay. So hopefully this actually, is something that's a net positive for everyone. Anyway, so let me actually show you what this is all about. Okay, so I have a polyline here, and it would be nice to just automatically place a bunch of road parts aligned to this polyline that I've, in this case, manually placed. I will say it also helps to have a polyline with plenty of geometry going on like this. You can see there's a lot of points. That's definitely helpful because there's no spline interpolation or anything like that. So basically this tool, think of like if you were to take what the line regular thing does in Terrain Processor and combine that with what the road tool does, where the road tool is manual but precise in picking road pieces, but this is automatic, but it only uses one road piece and it's not really intelligent. Okay, imagine taking those two things and put it together. That's basically what I've made. And I'm going to demo that right now. I will say that there are some limitations. There's some things that do need to be improved with it. And this is a side project. So if there's anyone out there who likes what I'm doing and would like to see this become a proper like tool that is kind of ironed, all the kinks are ironed out and it's fully functioning, it works nice, performant, all that good stuff. It would be cool if someone wanted to help me finish this. I'm totally willing to put this on GitHub. It's not on GitHub at the moment. I'm also totally willing to give the compiled exes to anyone who wants to mess with this and use this to help them in map making. But you'll see in a second here that there's some flaws, but for the most part, it generates some pretty decent looking roads. So anyway, let's get to the actual demonstration. So here we have our polyline, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in the right layer tab and click on the right layer where this polyline exists. There we go. And I'm going to, so select the correct layer, select the specific polyline. We're going to export the shape. We're going to do current layer. And I've made a special folder in the Project P drive thing for making this simple for myself and also for you visually. So we're just going to export this shapefile to this location, just like that. And so it's basically the same workflow as Terrain Processor, where you'd export a shapefile, you go in, you plug in the shapefile in here, and then you hit the button, and Bob's your uncle, right? So we've exported the shapefile, so now we're going to go to Visual Studio. Obviously, when you're using this tool, you wouldn't be doing this in Visual Studio, but this gives me an opportunity to potentially show the code, even though I don't want to get into the nuances right now. All right, I don't want to bore anyone. So yeah, there's some clunky bit going in here, but I just have to make sure that this is correct because this is the file it's going to be reading, test shape, in the folder called test shapes, whatever. So it's going to read the polyline file and do a bunch of stuff and then export essentially a LBT file. I don't know why it's called LBT, but it's an object file, or it's just a file which about a bunch of information about the position of a bunch of objects or whatever, which is essentially the same thing that terrain processor does, but we're doing it here. And so it just, figures out like, oh, what road part should we put where on this polyline, and then creates a file with all that positional information for all those roads and saves it to this location. Of course, you could save it wherever you want, ideally. I'm just using this path for testing purposes. So we'll run the program and boom, there you go. A lot of printing going on. Obviously, there doesn't have to be this much printing going on because, printing to the console can be slow. So it doesn't have to be that way. But here you can see these are all of the actual positions of the points in the polyline, right? So this is literally the polyline itself and all of its positions. This is it reading a P3D file. So I don't know if I said this already, but you will actually need to download the unbinarized or the unbinned road mesh files because the ones that are provided, when you set up the Dayz tools are the binarized versions, I believe. And so you need to download from a GitHub repository that had been linked somewhere on a specific Discord that I could also link in the description, but there's basically a link floating around where you can download the unbinarized road files that I believe you would need in order for this to all work. I don't know if this would work with the binarized ones. I have no idea. If it does, then that makes it nicer for everyone, but I haven't tested that. But you will need that. At least at my current state of understanding, you will need that. And if you're not sure what any of that means, then there are people that'll explain it to you. If you go on the right Discord, that'll explain all that. But yeah, so that's what that is. We're just reading these P3D files to get some important information that helps us, align all of the roads to each other. And then this is just printing out the actual process of it picking the roads. So like each line is just the road that it picked. So it starts with a straight road, and then eventually it does some lefts and then some rights and lefts, and it's kind of going back and forth. Like here's a left road and a right road, and it's kind of like interleaving, which seems kind of weird. Like why would it be doing that? And you'll see there's some quirks, some limitations that need to be kind of ironed out. But for the most part, the roads look pretty good. So you'll see. And then we have here these numbers here, which are basically just like how off it is from the polyline itself. So like this is like, in the beginning, obviously it's perfect because it's just aligning itself to the line. But then as it curves, it's going to be off by like tiny amounts. Like here it's off by 0.03 or 0.04 if you round it up meters, So for the most part, it did pretty well, except here where it's off by like a whole meter. But that's not too bad. So yeah, and a total of 147, I think it's 148 because it starts at 0, yeah. So 148 road pieces, and there you go. And then once it finishes, it exports and all that kind of stuff. Once that's done, we'll go back to Terrain Processor. We'll go to File, and we go to, let me click on the Objects tab. File, Import, Objects, and so, this was the Shapes folder, but now I had this Objects folder. So this is what got generated. And so we'll just click Open, and then just hit OK. And there you go, boom. So there's the road, and it looks pretty good. I mean, it looks weird. Like you might think, well, why does it look like that? And that's because in Terrain Processor, when it's visualizing objects, it just shows you the bounding box. So these curved pieces are like, I believe, like more or less correct, but because it's this is the bounding box of the mesh, that's why it looks like this. So this is actually good, right? You'll see that there's some like little errors that I don't know why they're happening. I have to figure that out. But you can see, there you go. Like this is what you'd expect if you wanted to automate the process of placing roads. So that's pretty awesome, to be honest, right? Obviously, intersections is something that this tool is not really supported. It's not something that like is functioning obviously at the moment. I don't know if I will support intersections because that's a whole other can of worms that I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into. And again, this is a side project, so I just wanted to do this because it's like I don't want to spend, I'd rather spend my time making an automation than spend my time manually placing one road after another. I'd rather be doing other things, making a map in the map making process. But yeah, so to finish this off, I'm going to launch Bulldozer and show you what this actually looks like, to show you how good it is and also how bad it is. Okay, so here we are, and here is the road. So I zoomed out just to kind of show you that, at least from a zoomed out perspective, it looks pretty good. I mean, you can see some like little oddities, like there, definitely you can see that. But there's a lot more that I will definitely show you as I move down this path and show you the whole thing. Um, but in the beginning, yeah, it's kind of like, there's this gap here, and it's like, well, that's not great. So I do have to figure out why. I think it's just either something with the math, or it has something to do with the fact that I made this assumption that, like, all of the road pieces that are curved are essentially just arcs. They're essentially just a portion of a circle. Like, if you take a circle and you cut a pie piece out, and then you kind of, like, uh, draw a thick line across the edge of that pie circle. That's essentially what this is, right? Which actually makes figuring out, like, calculating the starting point and the end point in the code to, like, connect them together, it makes it easier. But if the mesh files are not perfect circular arcs, like if they're off by a little bit, then that could be why I'm having this issue. Or it could be because there's a lot of matrix math going on that I had to, like, wrap my mind around for hours to make sure I was getting it correct. So it could have been that. I have no idea. Again, that's why I said earlier, if there's someone that wants to help with improving and fixing bugs with this to make it a proper tool that everyone can enjoy using, then, please do feel free to reach out to me on either Discord or, leave a comment in the comment section of this video to get my attention and say, hey, this is really cool. Like, if no one says anything, then I'm not gonna put in any time to, like, setting that up. But if there's people who actually want to use this tool, even in the current state that it's in, then I'm totally happy to put it on GitHub, make a release on GitHub, and so that people can download it, and also just release the source code. I'm happy to release the source code on GitHub so that people can see it and use it and change it and all that kind of stuff. But if no one cares, it's just like, I'm not gonna bother unless at least one person. If at least one person has an interest in looking at the code and improving upon it, or just running this on their computer and trying it out, then I'll do it. The one silver lining to these kind of flaws is that they're easy to fix. Okay, so this curve piece, so funny enough, like, this issue doesn't happen with straight pieces. It only seems to happen with left curves. I think it sometimes happens with right curves, but you'll see. Okay. In fact, this actually, because of this, well, I think, is this, okay, this is actually two left curves. So here, there is a seam there. You can actually see it, but you almost couldn't see it there. But yeah, so there's this, left curve. And so to fix it, all you would do really is move it. But actually, we're going to select both of these because there's actually two of these here. And I'm going to move them both at the same time because this seam here is perfect. And I'm going to just move this down just like that. Also, I will say that, to the best of my understanding, it's kind of inevitable that when you have a left curving road, that you're going to see like a little seam here. You just have to do your best to kind of, like, make it look good, right? Because, like, in reality, all curved roads curve right. And to make it a left curving road, you have to just flip the piece around. But what that means is that you're now the road is going backwards technically. And so obviously the textures aren't going to line up because they're designed to go all in one direction. So that's just how that is. But anyway, so there's that. I fixed that. And then we're going to go to this road piece. And of course you can see here, there's like this big segment that all of this is like totally like perfect. You could either say, all right, I'm going to, move this piece. Well, I think if you do move this piece, it'll be fine. Yeah, because you can see here, sometimes the pieces, it's not consistent. I don't know why, but sometimes the pieces kind of stretch a little bit, which is nice. So it means that you can kind of like, fudge it a little bit. In fact, it probably happens here as well. I moved both of them, but you probably didn't have to. Like you can see it kind of snaps. Like if I let that snap, and then I'll just move this piece, like here, And you can see there, I think that one did the same thing. Or no, actually, I guess it was overlapping. I guess there was a bit of overlap. That's fine. For the most part, I think most people aren't going to notice that. Most people are just concerned about, they're not going to be looking at the little texture seams in the roads. They're going to be looking in every direction, looking for someone that's going to shoot them in the head or looking for where loot spawns are. They're not going to be noticing that kind of stuff. I think that's just, you know, typical for Arma 2 and Dayz, I think, stuff. So you really just have to like go down the road, look for any oddities, and once you see an oddity like that, and this is another one that's a lot weirder, it's like off to the side, and all you have to do is literally just, because of the snapping, it makes it easier. Like you see where they're like, I like to call it kissing. They're like kind of kissing each other. The textures are like auto snapping to each other, which helps you kind of like fudge much more with much more ease. And then align those as best as possible. You know, I don't think you can. I don't think you can only do so good with that. And then you just keep going down the road, and you continue doing this. I'm not going to continue doing it, but you get the idea. I'd much rather do that than have to like manually click between bulldozer and terrain processor, figuring out what is the right road piece. Like this is a whole lot easier. I'd rather just make these little micro adjustments, but it'd be nice if this bug could be fixed and we wouldn't have to deal with that. Another thing that you might have noticed that is a bit weird. It's a bit of let's say another thing that needs to be improved about this tool is that sometimes on straightaways it'll get kind of like in a sine wave pattern where it'll say, oh, I'm gonna do a left turn and then I'm gonna do a right turn and then I'm gonna do a left turn and then a right turn, even though it could just easily do a straightaway. But because it doesn't have there's obviously a limited number of road pieces, so the algorithm is just doing that. When in reality, what it should be doing is it should take a straight piece, and it says if this is a straightaway, it just takes a straight piece and then just kind of rotates it like a tiny bit. Like I think this is this is actually not a straight piece, it's actually curved. But what it should do is it should just like instead of it being a curve, it should just be a straight piece and then kind of rotate it a little bit so that it aligns to the road and then just kind of, keep going instead of doing this. So that's a bit weird, but hey, I mean, it's a lot nicer than having to manually place these roads, and that's just annoying. So yeah, anyway, here it did a pretty good job, and I think that's because it's a right turn, so it's not going to have any issues with right turns and stuff like that. Here, there's a left turn that it didn't have any issue with, and I think that's just because sometimes the road pieces will like do that kissing thing where they kind of snap together, and so it's probably that's probably going on somewhere in here. There you can see there's a really tiny gap. I don't know why. It's just such a tiny gap. Why? What's going on there? I have no idea. It's like some of the road pieces, the gaps are like tremendous, and then other ones, it's just not tremendous at all. It's just tiny. And then there's a piece up here that I noticed that, this piece here, where like technically the road is like straight, and if you were to fix this road piece here, it's like a right curve and then a left curve and a right curve, but that's not at all what it should be doing. So you could just easily fix that. You can see here they snap, both sides snap, and there you go. You've technically fixed it, and you can really just be happy with that. Like you don't. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. You can just let that be how the road is in your map if you want. But if you actually go into terrain processor, you can see that's the actual path. It's like a curve that doesn't go left. It just goes right the whole time. But for whatever reason, it thought that the right decision was to put it like overshot and then put a left curve, right, to kind of compensate. So that's not at all what it should have done. And in reality, what it probably should have did was like it should have eased into the curve more slowly. Like it should have used a smaller right curve and then kind of just like used a straightaway here, and then I think you get what I mean. So that's what it should have did there. But yeah, so there's that. And then, nothing much else. You can see for the most part, the road looks good other than these kind of weird issues that I have to address. And there you go. Like I said, intersections would be a cool thing to support, but I think what would need to happen for proper intersections is that there'd be some additional information that would say, okay, like here's one polyline, and then what you'd have is at an intersection, you wouldn't have a polyline that goes through the intersection. You'd say, here's your polyline, and then you'd stop here, and then you'd have another polyline here, and then you'd have some additional information saying, like, this is one point of an intersection, this is another point, and then, whatever, and then kind of just split, this up into essentially four polylines, and then say the ends of these polylines is an intersection, and then have the algorithm kind of like figure that out. So maybe it's, I think, a lot more doable than I'm imagining in my head. But really, right now, I'm just trying to get an automation for straightaways, and intersections can kind of come later. Again, like I said, this is a side project, so I can only spend so much time on this, even though, like, I know people have been making Daisy maps for years now, so I'm like surprised that this hasn't existed. Maybe it does exist and I just haven't found it. No one has mentioned it over the many times that I've talked about it with people on various discords. But yeah, so there you go. A lot of improvement needs to be made with this, and I'd love to make this like a proper tool. Like it is a proper tool. It's just it has these weird issues that need to be dealt with. But yeah, if there's, like I said, if there's anyone out there, or any of you listening who like what you're seeing here and you want to try this out on your map, let me know. Obviously, this probably might not make sense for cities and stuff like that with intersections. It probably actually wouldn't be relevant in that case. It mostly makes sense for, maps where you have a lot of curving roads and stuff like that. That's really what this is for. But yeah, this right here was like me testing a while ago, like a straightaway. So here you can see the straightaways. It's perfect. Like it generated this straightaway perfectly. But then it got to this kind of curve. It's literally just a 3-point polyline, and it just kind of changes angle very abruptly. And the way the algorithm works is that it like overshoots, and it's kind of interesting looking. It's like a sine wave that kind of attenuates out. Eventually, it corrects itself. But obviously, you don't want that. In reality, this should just be a straight line. And then this needs to kind of like ease into the curve a lot more gradually. So maybe if there was some sort of spline interpolation going on, maybe that would help. But I feel like there's other things that would need to kind of happen as well to improve that. So yeah, the last thing I'll do is I'll do like a very impromptu, because I set this road up, but I'm going to do an impromptu road just to kind of see, like, to really push the limits of this tool. And so we select the layer, we go to File, Export, Shapes, Shape 2, Current Layer, make sure I select Current Layer, Export, and then we're going to go to here, and I do have to change this. Obviously, it's not going to be like this. If this was a thing that you were using, an end user would be using, obviously you wouldn't be changing the code. It would just be like a drag and drop thing where you just drag in the shape file and it'll just process it like that. And so yeah, so we'll hit run, and there you go, boom, just like that. And there you can see there's a distance of 7, so it's gonna happen, right? There's a 5, there's an 11, there's a 23. I was looking for that. It's gonna be interesting. I did one earlier that was pretty. It was pretty funny what it like ended up doing. But yeah, so now generate the shape file. We'll go here, go to objects, go to import objects, and there's our shape file. Open, okay, and there you go. So as you can see, obviously that's one of the places where it kind of messed up. It kind of goofed a little bit. But yeah, so let me hide this actual shape itself so you can see the road. There it is. Obviously, if you didn't have the shape file as a reference, you'd look at that and you'd think, well, that looks like a perfectly fine road. That doesn't look good, though. That looks wrong now that I just noticed that. Yeah, that, I don't know what happened there. Oh, it happened. So there was this road kind of came through this way, and in this road, it came like this. So they're intersecting, unfortunately. So that sometimes happens, sometimes. Uh, but that's why I think it's important to make sure you have plenty of geometry. But even then, I'd much rather fix these issues here and there rather than doing the whole dang road. Like that's literally like what one like that's it has a hard time on these bends, right? But like most of it's good, okay. And even then, I think a lot of these issues can be worked out. All right, so here we are. And here's the road. So where do we start here? The straightaways it does a lot better with. Um, and like I said, obviously these things need to be fixed. But it did a pretty good job. There's going to be those little gaps here and there. I don't see many gaps though, to be honest. It did good. It actually did good. Like it does pretty good with the straightaways for the most part. Um, and yeah, ignore the water. That's just the height map being the height map. So yeah, that's not great. That's not what you want. But point is, like I said earlier, you can very easily fix this kind of stuff. Like just, but ideally, the tool itself shouldn't be making these errors in reality. But if you were to look at this, you'd think, oh, that looks like a road. It's a very windy road. But ignoring the little issues here and there, this just looks like a road. You wouldn't like. Obviously, it's not lined up with the sat map. Just ignore that. Um, but you can see here it just looks like a road. Obviously, when you get to this point, it doesn't look good. That's obviously a problem. So that's just happenstance that they both kind of had a problem and then intersected with each other there. It's like a good chunk of the roads are like good, and then you got these weird ends here. I'm just repeating myself at this point a million times over, but there you go. That's I mean, if you were to manually place all of this, that would take. I don't know how long. Honestly, I don't know how long this would take if you were to do this manually, like road piece by road piece. But I would say, at least an hour, because I mean, obviously you wouldn't have these issues, but also this took like a minute or two to run this through the program. In a perfect world, this would not happen and all those other issues would be gone. And if there's anyone out there, I think this is the final thing I'm going to say for this video. I'm going to end it off because I don't know how long this video is. If there's anyone out there who likes what you see and would like to try out this tool, please let me know. Please voice that opinion to me in some form, either on Discord or YouTube in the comments section down below. And even if one person wants to try this out, I will put it on GitHub. I will create a release for it so that you can try it out. And if you're someone who's interested in fixing these issues, if you think just by looking at it, if you think what the issue is, like with this and the gaps that you were seeing earlier, if you know what's going on there, then I'm totally happy to have you, contributing, GitHub repo that I would. It's not up now, but I would put it up so that you could fork it and fix these issues, because again, this is a side project and I'm probably not going to be spending a lot more time on it past today because I have a main project I have to get back to. So yeah, that's it. I hope what I've shown you is of value to the Dayz mapping community. I hope this is a tremendous value of some sort to anyone out there. So thank you for watching, and yeah, that's it. Bye bye.